You're gonna...
Hello, welcome back to episode 5 of Two Coins Culture. I am Katie Sciba,
And I'm Erin Hammond.
and we are delighted that you're here again. Thank you so much. We're jazzed.
Yes.
This topic that we've decided to cover seems to have no shortage of subcategories and things to discuss, especially in terms of the mind, the heart, how to handle things practically. And we are thrilled to cover that with you.
Yes. So tonight we're going to cover question and answers. And hopefully we'll have enough answers for y'all. But we've got some questions from people who watch us that cover kind of the scope of what we talk about week after week. And then we are also going to talk about how we got our name, Two Coins Culture, because it's not a really obvious name, I would think, for, I don't know, a minimalist essentialist podcast. But Katie and I are more than just about our stuff. So we want to explain our name to you and what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. And what we are trying to do here is encourage each other, ourselves, and you to live simply for the sake of living abundantly, right? So clearing our lives of anything that distracts from what it is that we're meant to do, whatever it is that fulfills us, and keep the things that support our particular missions, so to speak, And it's so important to live according to that intention and recognize that having everything, keeping everything, having it all, so to speak, is not conducive to living well.
Right.
So we usually have like a quotation, or maybe we'll mention a song at the end if we can think of one by then. And tonight, what I want to do is bring up this awesome quotation from Dr. Henry Cloud. I saw him speak at a conference several years ago, and he hit the nail on the head. I wrote it down immediately. So he said, "It turns out that a rose bush, like many other plants, cannot reach its full potential without a very systematic process of pruning." I think that's remarkable because if you've gotten your hands in the dirt ever, if you've tried to grow a plant, you know that it will thrive when it's pruned in order to do really well. Erin, do you want to mention that rose bush you were talking about?
Yeah. So right before the podcast, Katie shared this quote with me, and I had this recollection of about 10 years ago. My husband and I lived at this house that we were renting, and we had gotten to know this lady in the neighborhood, and she had been eyeballing this rose bush in our backyard. And this rose bush was probably, I don't know, 5 feet, 5.5 feet, and quite wide, but it looked like it was unwell. And so anyway, the old people moved out, we moved in, and we befriended her, and she like wanted to get her hands on this rose bush. She loved flowers. And so I was like, well, have at it, because I don't know anything about roses. And I remember watching her like pruning. She's like, it needs pruned. And so she came to my backyard, and she's like at this rose bush. And I'm watching her because I'm thinking, she might just take some off the edges, some off the top. And just when I would think she was done, more, 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 more. And she went on like this until there was like this much from like the ground to the top. And I knew this woman enough to know that like she probably knew some things, but I was like, do you really, like, at that point I'm like, she just destroyed this rose bush. Well, it came back, and it was more prolific. It was more, the buds were bigger. I mean, it was just like she did it all the way down till you think it's almost dead. And I've actually read about that since I've had my own rose bushes from my grandmothers, which are very special to me, on pruning. And they often will say like, prune it back till you think, there's like a spot, but like prune it back almost where you think it's not gonna survive. And they do, they come back bigger, beautiful, more beautiful. So, I mean, I believe that, but yeah, it's easier when it's a rose bush and you're kind of like, but like if you get rid of your own stuff, then you're like, oh, shoot, can I really live without that? Yeah, probably. Probably you can.
And the long-term effects, though, that you and I both experienced is that in very intentionally pruning our lives
Mhm.
of things, material and non, that don't contribute to us living well, God, isn't that just freeing? And when we have a plant and you're cutting off excessive limbs or dead limbs, I mean, a weight is truly lifted from
Yeah.
the plant itself and it can live better. And that's what it is with us. How many times do we rid ourselves of clutter or, an obligation on the calendar that isn't serving us? And you just, oh, good.
Yeah.
I'm excited about this. Life is renewed in that way. So
Yeah.
I love that meditation. I think it's beautiful.
Yeah. I do too. I think it's very poignant because often, I mean, even in scriptures, God uses analogy between creation and us, like the seeds on the rocky soil or the fertile soil, water. Like there's all these nature analogies to our souls and our spiritual lives. And so I think it relates quite succinctly with how we actually are the more we prune back. Um, yeah, I wish I could do it till I felt like I was almost gonna die. I do sometimes feel like I'm almost gonna die. But we'll talk about that more when we talk about the name of our podcast.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean panic attacks and like, did I really get rid of that thing? You know?
Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. That's funny too, because I've had the opposite experience of like getting rid of so much out of a sense of zeal.
Mm-hmm.
Just like, oh, I'm gonna do it. And I go on some sort of idealistic bender. And I'm like, oh, we don't really need it. I don't really need this. And I will overdo it and I will be psyched about it. Instead of like, oh my gosh, what have I just done? I'm like, look at what I've just done. This is
Yeah.
amazing.
I have the opposite reaction, which is why we make a good pair. Cause I
Yeah,
totally, I mean, you've been my go-to person when I'm like crying. I'm like, I can't believe I did
totally.
how am I gonna live and breathe without my
Oh, do
porcelain
it.
photograph? Yeah. So yeah, it's true though. And I find myself I think that's something that I'll probably carry with me from this podcast is that pruning is good. And even in our spiritual lives, I know this isn't a spiritual podcast necessarily, but just even in our spiritual lives, like sometimes you can have so much going on, like I'm reading this book and I'm doing that thing and I'm whatever, that it's actually the more humble and right thing to prune those things away even and just focus on something simple, something doable, something that will really speak to your heart rather than like listing off this litany of all the things you're doing to, awaken your spiritual life. Sometimes too much is not a good thing.
Yeah, right. Okay, so that's such a lovely segue into one of the questions that we received was from a mother who said that she really wanted to live liturgically, Catholic, and there are, I mean, regardless of what your faith is, there is an abundance of things, books you could read, prayers you could offer, sacrifices you could make, time commitments, things that you can do, not just for yourself, but how to incorporate your family into this joint effort. How do I make my family holier? How do I bring them closer to the Lord? And because there is such a super abundance, truly, of options, it's really easy for someone who's doing their best and wanting to take on a new effort. It's really easy for that person to feel guilty if they're not doing it at the same level that another person is doing it, right? And especially like when you read blogs about moms who do this, or this, and then
You
you
want
look
to
at
do a
your
whole
own,
podcast on that? I have
right?
so much to say about it.
We
Oh,
legit could,
we
but
legit could.
it's so easy to look at what someone else's effort and use that as a measure against your own very simple efforts, and then to feel badly about it. So what are your thoughts on that, Erin? Like, how do you shed the guilt that we might feel from the efforts that we really, this is what we can do right now?
Well, I'll just speak from my own experience. It's for me, it's just humility, like just accepting the humble part of we are mortal beings. We can truly only do so much, and we do not make ourselves holy. We we can cooperate, but we are not the ones that sanctify us. Jesus sanctifies us. So you can read all the books, you can do all the things and buy all the planners and say all the prayers, but why are you doing that? Are you doing that because you think that is the stairway to heaven? Do you think you are, like, why are you doing that? So the more humble thing is, at least what I have found, is and also, like, my good buddy Jordan will say, out of humility, if you want to get going on something, you almost have to choose the step that is so small. It's like idiotically small. But that's humility, is just knowing that you're not that rock star that you want to be, which is great. So you want to be a zealous Christian. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing to want. But you might just be, I don't know where that is in scripture, but you might just be at the place where all you can take is milk. You're not ready for the solid food yet. And that's a really humbling thing to have to accept where you are. So first off, I would say what I've had to do is pray for humility, because you can, maybe at certain times in your life, you were kind of Johnny on the spot and like, I read my Bible and my catechism and I had like 3 or 4 prayer devotionals and I journaled and I prayed for an hour a day. Well, maybe that was a different season. So we talk about that a lot on our podcast, is just different seasons for things. And perhaps right now, the season of spiritual life is maybe you're just praying for 5 minutes, quiet, eyes closed, not trying to think about anything else. And you're reading small little scripture passages, and that's all you can do. I mean, that's what I'm trying to do. Because when you're overloaded, most people, I would suspect, don't do anything. Like it's hard. I think it's the rare bird or the advanced spiritual person who can maintain reading 10 different spiritual books and pray an hour a day and, like, do all their obligatory duties for their state in life. But I think most of us aren't there yet.
Yeah, agreed. And I would say whenever we are changing our lives to live in a more spiritual way, when we are trying to become closer to the Lord and we're doing our very best to bring our family along, like, that's our loaves and fish. So we take our efforts and we present them to the Lord and we say, here, I have this, like, please bless it and multiply it. And any thought, any consideration that it's not enough, or you feel guilty about the small efforts that you'll make. I mean, that's not how Jesus talks to his faithful. That's not from God. So who is it that would look at your good efforts, at your attempts toward holiness, and say, you're not doing as well as she is? That's
well, and I like just using it like a regular analogy. I love analogies. Is if you and I were both going to Florida, say, like, we're both basically I know that sounds lovely right now, right? Let's say we're both going to Florida. We're both starting about approximately in the same part of Nebraska, but you choose to fly from Omaha to Florida, and you and your family are flying, and my family and I are like, you know what? We're just going to make this a road trip, like a 4-day road trip, because we know people in Missouri and we know people in Tennessee and we know people, along the way, and we're going to stop. Like, that's very much how the spiritual life is. We're both headed to the same place, but you might do something, you might get there a little quicker. We're taking a route. Neither of them are bad, but we would never compare. We would never be like, oh, the Cibas. I mean, or we would, yeah, like, what are they doing? They're missing all the good landmarks along the way, or, they're not. This is a really good homeschool adventure. We would never like dog on you for flying, nor would we be like, well, but they're going to get there faster. I mean, we're doing this because we can only choose to, drive or whatever. We would never do that. So, but we do that in spiritual life and in other ways all the time. We compare ourselves to other people all the time. Like, they're getting there faster. They're getting there better. It's like silly. We're all going to get there, hopefully, if we're, got our sights set on it. Anyway, that's just my little analogy.
I think it'd be really good to pair that experience, like when you are making your small efforts or medium efforts or great efforts in all of those circumstances, to thank God for the ability to make any effort at all.
Yeah.
Like, all right, well, thank you, Jesus, for the grace to live this way, at least this way.
Well, yeah, it's humility, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Amen, girl.
Yeah.
Okay. So, let's see. Next question. Do you have a preference?
No, go for it.
Okay. So we'll go with maybe a more basic one right now. When do you make time to purge, like material possessions, say?
Do you want to answer that first?
No, go on.
Okay. I don't have a regular time. I have just taken this attitude of, if I see something around my house that isn't being used, or I know that I'm not going to want it. I think in a previous episode, I mentioned that I have a spot in my house and we usually have boxes readily available. And so I will either add to an already existing box, or I will go get a new box anytime I see something. I do, though, plan times to purge. So I coordinate with my husband to watch my kids, because I have found if I try to do any kind of major purging, I have to be just solely devoted to that. It's very difficult for me. It actually drives my anxiety up. This happened just last night, if I have my kids around me. So yeah, so last night there was a bunch of paper clutter that I wanted to tackle. I had a filing cabinet and I had several boxes, because I keep almost every little drawing my kids make for me, or just little notes. And I just had boxes everywhere in lots of different rooms, and it was a mental tab. And it's been a mental tab for since we moved almost 2 years ago. So I asked for my husband, I said, I just can like at 5:30, when you are done coming home from work, can you be the sole go-to person? And I'm going to just stick my my AirPods in, and I'm going to go to work. And I did. But at one point, my 2 older girls came in and I had papers all over our bed. And they started going through, because they were like, oh, I remember when you did this. And I was like, stop touching everything. Well, because I had piles of trash and piles that needed to be filed, and they were kind of picking things up. And I'm like, I don't want anything getting into the trash. Anyway, so I just politely said, I love you both so much, but get out of here. And so
yeah, I do that. I love you so much. Get out of here.
Yeah, I love you, but I'm really trying to do this and do it quickly, and I will spend time with you when I'm done. And I'll show you all this stuff when I'm done, because it will be all neat and organized into your pile. Won't that be cool? So they kind of giggled, like, oh, okay, see ya. So then they left, and then I was fine again. But yeah, so sometimes it's scheduled, sometimes it's not. And I just have And it kind of depends on where I'm at, spiritually, and what it is too that I'm doing. Like if it's just a household thing, like I don't need time for that. But when it's papers and more sentimental type things, then I do need my own. I just need to be by myself.
Yeah, agreed. Especially when it comes to that paper stuff, because sometimes you're looking at bills, insurance documents, tax documents, whatever. And I'll tell my kids, I'm going through grown-up documents right now, and I must focus.
Yeah.
If I'm going through like a kitchen cabinet,
Right.
I can do that pretty easily. So in terms of when I do that, so if it's not the grown-up paperwork that I'm sorting through, sometimes because I love taking bites out of purging.
Yeah.
So if I have dinner simmering on the stove, I'll open a cabinet and handle one shelf. Or handle half of a shelf while I've got my timer going, and just taking bites out of it that way. Like, could I do a huge overhaul right now? No. I was speaking with a mom's group. I maybe mentioned this in a previous episode where one mom said, she asked me, what do I do? Because I feel like I would need a whole weekend to get my life, my home where I want it to be. And I was like, oh girl, you need more than that. Like we all do. And I said, but even if it took just a weekend, do you have that right now? She said, I don't. And I said, okay, so you work with what you do have in terms of time and personal bandwidth.
Right.
So can I declutter half a shelf? Well, I've got rice cooking. Totally. Absolutely. So you do what you can. And also I think having these small habits makes a big difference. So I will grab my mail and then stand in front of the trash can and like throw out the junk immediately. And so then I'm just dealing with what I actually need to pay attention to. I can't just throw it in a stack and just walk away. No, because then that's going to accumulate, So small habits like that make a huge difference. So when I purge, unless it's like a designated handful of weeks when I'm just trying to get the home in order slowly, it's those few minutes here and there during the day that honestly pave the way for sanity.
Yeah. Yeah, it's worth it. I mean, the trade-off. So if if you have kids and you want to do a weekend and you have somebody that's willing to take your kids for a weekend, go for it. Like that sounds dreamy to me. And I think about that a lot, but I don't have that opportunity.
Yeah.
So I have to I have that thought and then I quickly shove it away because that's just not reality. If I wait for that, I will never declutter.
It'll never do it. You'll never do it.
I'll never do it. So don't wait for the perfect conditions. You just have to dive in somewhere, do it badly.
But badly.
Just it's going to be roughshod. And I can't emphasize enough that in the process of doing anything like purging, repairing a relationship, whatever, you're going to be clumsy and bad at it when you begin it. So know that nobody does anything perfectly, even us. Like you and I have been at this for a long time. I certainly don't do it perfectly. I don't have really good habits when it comes to decluttering or getting rid of stuff. But you just got to exercise the muscle. I think you said once. You just keep doing it and do it badly.
So because you love analogies, let's ride that train for a minute. I was speaking recently and I drew an analogy of like an infant learning to walk.
Yeah.
So, when they're like emerging from infancy into toddlerhood, they're not quite full-blown toddler, they're not quite babies, and when a little one is learning to walk, they might take an awkward step and then they just flop right on their bum. And what do we do as the parents? We're like, okay, we applaud, And then if they want to take more walks, we like give them a finger to hold, 2 fingers to hold, and they are just so excited to take these baby steps. And we are patient with them. We don't ever look at the baby who takes 2 steps and then falls and say, like, you fell again? All right, well, figure it out and let me know. Or why aren't you running? Why aren't you running, baby? Like, we don't treat our little children that way. Any little ones learning how to do anything, right? We encourage them and we understand their limitations. So when we're beginning these efforts again, as I have done so many times, I mean, look at yourself as someone who's just a baby. You're just learning how to walk. And when you fall out of the habit, when you feel like you have to start over again, okay, well, get up and start over again. And here we go. You don't have to feel guilty about not doing anything perfectly or idealistically.
Or even if we just want to totally ride the train with the baby analogy, you might have a regression. Like you might totally, learn all the things, or like I'm thinking of sleep regression. Like you might, oh, I'm sleeping through the night. I'm like getting rid of stuff. It's so easy. Oh, and then like Christmas hits and all of a sudden you're like, oh, there's so much stuff, or something happens and it just becomes emotionally difficult to get rid of things for whatever reason. And you might have a little bit of a regression. It's all normal. It's all par for the course. And I mean, it's just like, I think that the narrative in our culture is like, if you do this long enough, and then you're going to become this, and you're just going to stay that way. And that's not how anybody is. That's not normal human development. And then we shame ourselves when we regress or relapse or don't do it perfectly, even though we've been doing it perfectly for years, and then something happens to get us off our clip, and then it's like we just like beat ourselves up, and then we allow our culture and all the talking heads to do the same, like, oh yeah, well, it's because you didn't do that one thing. You were doing all this other stuff, you didn't do that one thing. I don't know. I just don't buy into that stuff anymore. It's like we continue to develop as humans. We continue to make mistakes. We continue to just do our best every single day, every moment. And we can't berate ourselves for not being perfect.
Yeah, agreed. How many times have you ever heard somebody say, like, I used to be so good at?
Oh, I do that all the time. I do it all
And
the time.
it just breaks my heart when I hear it from people. I'm like, okay, well, did you stop for a little while, or was it a temporary pause or whatever? Like, it's okay. It sounds like you're a person.
Yeah. It sounds like life. Sounds like life to me. We sing that song around the songs.
I love that.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you ready for a different question?
Sure.
Okay. I really love this one. Is there a set of questions or boxes to check prior to purchasing something?
I do have a set of questions.
Well, don't hold out on us, girl. What is it? This is why we're here.
First off, it starts before I leave the house. Do I really need to go get this thing? And then a commitment to writing down exactly what I need. And this goes for anything, groceries, whatever it is. And then I resolve to stick to my list unless I get to the store and I am visually reminded that I actually, truly need that thing and forgot to put it on the list. That's step number one. Step number two is when I get somewhere, let's just say I'm going out, okay? Because I do like to go. There's a thrift store that I have found that I really like. As of late, I have forbade myself from going there because it's a legit thrift store with legit thrift store prices, and there are so many irresistible things there. So I just don't even allow myself to go there for the time being. But when I get there, I'm like, do I like the idea of this thing, or do I actually, like, can I right now think I'm going to go home and put this thing there, or I'm going to go home and do this with that thing? Even if it's 25 cents, not going to break the bank, like it's okay. If I don't know the answers to those questions of like, where does it go? What am I going to do with it? I put it back. So I talk myself through those kind of things. And I laugh because my daughter, my oldest daughter and I, well, all my daughters and I, we love the movie Confessions of a Shopaholic.
I've
And
never seen
it's so cute and so funny. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for younger children. There's nothing super bad in it, but anyway, we watch it and we like it. Because it's got a good moral to the story.
it.
But she's a shopaholic, as the title suggests. And she goes to this one meeting, you know, that she goes to a 12-step meeting for shopaholics. And then she has to go out into the world, and she like goes by this store, and it's like she smells the store, and she goes in and she finds these gloves, and she's like, because they have this motto in the 12-step. They're like, my wallet is closed. I do not need to shop. So my daughters and I, when we go into stores where I'm like, I'm just getting what's on my list, my oldest will go, my wallet is closed. I do not need to shop. And so it's kind of become this joke, but also this real thing that we do.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, it's kind of teaching them like money management. And that's kind of the great thing about the movie is it teaches like it actually teaches how stuff gets in the way of our relationships, or addictions get in the way of our relationships. It's really well done. And you know, it's fun. It's funny too. So anyway, she's in the store and she's like telling herself like, my wallet is closed. I do not need to shop. And she sees these gloves and she's like, I need these because it is cold and I have hands, you know. So she justifies everything. And I find myself doing that where I'm like, well, I'm a creative person. I need more supplies, or I could just spray paint that. Well, then I got to go get spray paint. And so I have to have these strict rules of like, do I actually even have the time to deal with it? So I know my questions were all kind of mishmashy, but it depends on where I'm going. It depends on what I'm after. But I have to go through those gated questions. So like before I even leave the house, what is it that I'm going to go do? If I'm going to a thrift store just to kind of peruse, like, do I actually need this? Where is it going to go? You know, what am I going to do with this right when I get home? Like, does this have a place, or do I just like the idea of this? And then if I'm out like grocery shopping, for instance, because you can have too much food and then waste food because you bought too much.
Yeah.
Or it's not good for you, or it was an impulse buy or whatever. Yeah, like, did I actually forget this thing? Or am I just hungry? You know?
Yeah, right.
It's
I
stewardship.
love that. Yeah, it is just good stewardship. So, and not only of like your finances, but also your time and
Yeah,
like, and your mind too, right?
right.
Do you really have time to spend on this thing? Do you have time to think about this thing, right? So my current home is pretty small. We live in just over 1,400 square feet. So it's our family of 7 in 1,400 square feet. And then when we lived in Louisiana, we had 6 people in 1,200 square feet with no basement. So and I'll tell people, they'll say like, what's the most minimalist thing that you have? And I'm like, my house, because we're limited in terms of space. So, and I really delight in curating a comfortable home. I like having a visually beautiful home. I think it's fun. And everything that we have on our walls, I really like. And
Yeah.
it's there, it has a purpose. It has usually a story behind it, something like that. It's important.
Yeah.
So if I spot something that I really love and I'm like, oh man, we could this go great on the wall, or this is a great piece of furniture, whatever. I think, well, it would have to replace what I already have.
Yeah.
And I like what I already have.
Yeah.
So it just slices through
Mm-hmm.
the question of should I even get this thing, right? And that's in a situation where you're kind of impulse buying. When it comes to clothing too, I'm in the same situation where I have this small antique dresser and I have some storage under our bed for like seasonal stuff, right? So the bulkier things.
Sure.
And I think, all right, well, if I'm going to purchase more clothing, then that means something's got to go.
Yeah.
Or people do that with mugs, one in, one out.
Yeah.
And do you like this new thing enough to give something that you've held on to with intention the boot?
Right. Right.
So, yeah, yeah. I like that. That was a good one. So, and this works well with a question I got from another listener who asked, how do you handle impulse purchasing? How do you handle yourself?
Mhm.
That's not it. None of this is about the stuff. It's about handling yourself and orienting
Well,
yourself.
so that's really interesting. When I met my husband, he told me he had majored in economics in college. And I was like, ew, brainiac, lofty guy, right? Because I'm like over here, like reading self-help books for my psychology major. And then he goes, well, it's not that different from psychology. Economics is just the psychology of how people spend money. And I was like, excuse me, what? Oh, yes, you're right.
Wow.
You're
Yeah.
right. And so I've read a couple economics books, just like lower level, kind of like
Yeah.
extraneous
Intro.
reading, yeah, to like what he advised. And it's just about what people think about where their money is going. And it has more to do with your value system than it does about the actual dollar bills. And so, yeah, I thought that was really fascinating. So if you look at there's a meme, I'm forgetting it now. It's something like if you want a story about your life, just get your receipts and staple them together
See,
or something like that. Because that's basically like what you do. That's who you are, is like where you spend money and what you're doing with your life. So,
yeah.
as far as impulse buys, though, I think it's much the same as like when I go shopping. Like it's really that self-governance of, do I need this thing? Is this going to improve my life? Is this truly something that will benefit me spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically? And I think most people don't take it to that level, but if you recognize that we're stewards of our finances and we're stewards of our home, and you take that to the deeper level, then you'll take a moment. You'll tell yourself, I have to take a moment and really think about this thing.
Yeah.
Again, we're not all perfect. I have had impulse buys and I keep the receipts because I keep things. So I'm usually able to return it when I'm like, I don't need this. You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
don't need this. So I don't know. It's hard because then you're like, I got to take time to go back to the store and all of it. But if you can get ahead of things, I think that's what I've learned in my journey of stuff, is like if you can have a little forethought about what this thing is, what am I after? Am I after trying to bolster my ego, or am I just feeling bad and shopping gives me a dopamine hit and so I can feel good about my state in life or whatever? Like, what is it? Why are you buying that thing? Um,
Mhm.
but I'm prone to think that way. I know that there are certain temperaments that aren't prone to thinking about those things all the time, like I do. And I'm not saying that I'm like a lofty thinker. It's just how I'm built. But I struggled with impulse buying, but it was out of a sake of like, I think when I really had a hard time with it, it was at a time when there were a lot of things going wrong in my life. And so I was after trying to pose. I was a poser. Like, if I can make everything like look good, if I can look good, no one will be any the wiser. The things are hard.
Including yourself.
Yeah. So if you can just have a little, I think it just involves, again, like some self-reflection, some forethought, and then discipline. I mean, it's really just character stuff. Like if you can go into a store and just think about, like, who am I? What am I doing? What am I after? Why did I come to this store? Like, what emotions are going on? Then you probably won't have as many impulse buys. But not all impulse buys are bad. I mean, they're not. Some of them are fun and it's okay. But like if you're gonna impulse buy, like, a couple $100 of stuff, that might not be good. But like a little $5 whatever from the dollar store for your kids, because they're like, I don't know, because they wanna, fine, whatever. It'll be okay. Just don't do it every day.
You'll live. So I completely agree. It's good to get ahead of the part of yourself that wants to just go for it, right? So almost thinking of that inclination as another person.
Yeah.
We don't want to be like schizophrenic about it, but we can. And if
now right?
There's like prudent Katie, and then there's like emotional Katie who went to TJ Maxx. Like,
monkey brain. They call it monkey brain. Where you're like, oh yeah, where you get like distracted. Like you might walk into TJ Maxx and you're like, I'm Katie Sciba, the minimalist. And then monkey brain's like, oh, cute shirt. Oh, over the budget. Don't take it to the counter. Like everybody's got monkey brain.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would, I'm a big fan of the receipts. And then a lot of places, if you just have your method of payment, you can make the return no problem.
Yep.
And I was telling a friend of mine, maybe a year or so ago, I was like, hey, I'm headed to the store to make another return. Said it, even though it's most definitely a waste of time, because I bought this without thinking about it, got home, felt guilty, decided that it wasn't worth it at all. And so now, for making the good decision to return it, they're going to give me money.
Yeah.
Like, sure.
Yeah, the impulse buys they're tricky. Yeah, and I think another, like, because I love psychology, I know that there's a 30-second window between stimulus and response. And so if you can catch yourself, like if you can stand there, just knowing that, if you can stand there with anything, with yelling at your kids, saying something nasty to your husband, typing something out on Facebook, if you can give yourself a 30-second window between, like, I'm having this thought and I'm going to do this thing from the thought, you might give yourself enough time to reconsider, just give yourself 30 seconds and just slow your thinking down a bit.
Yeah.
And you don't have to do the return. You don't have to keep the receipt because you didn't buy the thing.
Yeah.
It's just a change in perspective, really. Like,
and if you don't buy the thing, like, some people are like, I have a coupon, I can save 25%. I'm like, well, you can also save 100% if you wait.
You can also save 100%.
You can. And like with big purchases, especially, or with the purchases that are preoccupying. So maybe it's not big like a car or a house, but it's on your mind. I heard Rachel Cruz, so Financial Peace University personality, Dave Ramsey's daughter. I heard her say, sleep on it.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
If you've gone this far without having the thing,
yeah,
you're excited and you're jonesing to get the thing, that's fine. Like, sleep on it. Get some rest. Think about it in the morning.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I mean, you could go all over the place on, like, because we're impulsive. We're just impulsive. We're impulsive beings. And so, yeah, if you can slow yourself down, go through the, am I hungry, angry, lonely, tired? Like, what am I after? Do I need this? You could approach that impulse buy from a lot of different directions, and you could escape having to spend the time, like, where did I put the receipt? Oh, do I have to keep it now because I don't know where I put the receipt? Oh, I do like it. I mean, that's what stores want. It's marketing is a whole psychology. It's a psychology. So they want you to take it home because any effort you have to exert to take it back, you're probably not gonna. So it's better to just cut it off at the pass at the store, put it back on the shelf. See ya. It was nice holding you for a minute. I'm out of here. And
It was nice holding you for a minute.
nice holding you. We had a minute together, and then just leave it because you can always get it tomorrow. Probably. You can always get it tomorrow. Wait for the next sale. It's like, it's okay. It'll be okay.
Yeah, hold on while your emotions and mind are so heightened. Like that's not the best time. So let's like let yourself decompress.
Yes.
And then if you're still like, hey, yeah, this would be a good decision. But to the whole like sale concept, a lot of us are like, well, hey, maybe I don't need this thing, but dang, I could get it so cheaply. It's really inexpensive. It might be useful. So in those situations, we might, and this is another question that was submitted, we might think of ourselves as like being frugal or smart and thrifty because dang, like I have this thing and it only cost me $5.99.
Yeah.
Down from $50.99, and we look at the discount as some sort of huge perk to it. And I know I do. Like my husband will say, hey, I like that jacket. And I'm like, you want to know how much I paid for it? And or how little, honestly.
I saw somewhere that that's such a Midwest thing to do. Like,
It totally is.
you're complimented and you're like, $5.
Oh my gosh, you did that the last time I was at your house. Do you remember? I was like, oh my gosh, I love your top. And you went, I got it at the thrift store for free. Because we do that. Because sometimes part of getting the thing, like what makes it so awesome is that we hardly paid for it. This is so great.
Effortless. Yeah.
I love your antique bookshelf. This is a compliment I've gotten. Love your antique bookshelf. I'm like, great, thank you.
Yeah.
I got it for $25 off of Facebook.
Yeah.
And it's fun because you get so proud of how much you didn't spend.
Right.
But here's the deal. You have to have yourself oriented. Like what is, how do you term it, Erin? You use this phrase all the time. Like your reference point. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So just your reference point. What's your mission? What's your driving force? And is this thing or how you're going to spend your time or whatever, is this contributing to what you're trying to accomplish with your life or in some respect?
Right.
And if the thing isn't, or if it's neutral and it's on sale, like let somebody else find the deal.
Yeah. 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 That's just it too. I mean, so much of this, if we bring it back to the stewardship piece, and I don't want to talk about this too much now because we'll talk about it with the title of our podcast, but the sharing, like if you're the one, I mean, not that you're going to buy out an entire store, but if you're the one just taking all this stuff for your ego or because you fear that you're never going to find anything like it ever again, which I have that thought, and I think it's asinine because it's 2024 and we have the internet.
We have the internet. Yeah.
Like photo search things, and you can probably find another one on eBay or what have you if you really, really, really want it. You literally can find anything in the world from anywhere in the world. So yeah, I mean, you just have to like be okay not having it and allowing somebody else, like, it's okay. Somebody else will get it and it'll be fine. And what's the worst case scenario if I don't have it? Probably nothing. Probably my life is not going to change in any way, shape, or form in the negative. It's fine.
So I think a good antidote to that situation, as well as the impulse buying, is gratitude. Looking at what you already have and being like, you know what, this is not only enough, but it's good. Like I already have something that fills this purpose. It's fine. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, And sometimes you'll find yourself drawn to the same things that you already have just because you already have them, you know?
But we all fall into this stuff where you find what you like and you just want a bunch of it because it makes you happy, and that's all well and good. But like you gotta kind of have a cap, and again, just stay ahead of yourself if you can. And I think the biggest part of it, the deeper emotion, is identity. And then we feel shame of some sort. And not all shame is bad. I'm not saying like you shouldn't feel shame if you're just spending money, or like bringing things into your home that you don't need, or that are becoming, hurdles for your family living familial life. But then we don't share it with somebody else, or we don't do anything to remedy that, to, you know, to kind of discipline ourselves. So, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean,
And that self-discipline is it's so paramount to this whole process, really just like life in general.
yeah,
But when you're especially trying to whittle away at excess, whatever that looks like, knowing yourself and then disciplining yourself with love, right? Is it's just it's so important.
yeah, yeah,
Um, okay, so what do you think? Like one more question, and then we'll go with our title.
sure.
Okay. Okay, cool. So this one's a two-parter.
Okay.
All right. What are things that you make a point not to purge? That's one question. Part two is, what should a person add to life to further simplify?
Ooh, I think the second part is a more difficult question.
Okay, so just in terms of material possessions, and this is more for my kids than it is for me. I don't purge Legos.
Mm,
And Legos, they're tiny. They can get everywhere. They can, but you just figure out how to manage them. But dang, like my kids, they will go to town with Legos. They are. I told one of my kids, I love seeing your Lego creations because it's like I get to see this visual representation of your thoughts. Like,
mm,
what ideas have you had? What are
mhm,
you creating? And they do love the Lego sets with like the instructions on how to make a certain thing,
yeah.
but they also go nuts with like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to make that part this way. I'm going to do it my way. And they become little engineers. And dang, it entertains all five of my children. Oldest is 14, youngest is almost 7. So the other day I went to a Lego store with my son who turned 11. It's just the two of us in there. And I'm having a heyday. Like we're at this minifigs bar where you can like create your own dudes.
Oh,
And I was like, oh man, I'm totally invested. And I look around and I see other adults in the store, and I thought, I know why you're here. I get it. You know what I'm gonna do someday? I'm gonna grab a coffee. I'm gonna come make a minifig is what I'm gonna do. It's gonna be great.
yeah.
So I don't get rid of Legos. I used to say that I didn't purge Legos or books. I think purging books is important because we receive so many as gifts, or like somebody has a box of books that they haven't looked at in forever and they just pass it along. I want to make sure that whatever reading material we have in the house is, in short, efficacious. I want to
Sure.
make sure that we're actually becoming better people by reading this fiction or this nonfiction, whatever it is. So this is like furthering our self-improvement. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So even the sweet little kid stories, hey, let's make those good. I don't need
Mhm.
children's books in the house where the characters have attitudes about their parents. So anyway, it's books that further virtue, I suppose.
Yeah.
So those are two things that I don't purge.
Okay.
Or one thing, sorry, that I
Yeah.
don't purge.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I tend to keep a lot of tool type stuff. So when I was purging my craft supply, I made sure to keep needles, pins, bobbins, my sewing machine, rotary cutters, scissors, stuff like that. I will not get rid of. But I did get rid of material. I suppose that could go either way. But I know that it's not that expensive. I can find material, and there wasn't anything specific I had planned for that material. So for me, tools, even screwdrivers, stuff like that. I have my own little screwdriver set. So yeah, I mean, the list goes on and on, but tools of that nature, or like if it can be used again and again and again to continue to make things or fix things, I will keep that kind of stuff. Um, I mean, I'm still at the beginning stages of this, so there's not a lot. Like what do I not purge? Like everything. I mean, what do I try to not get rid of? Everything. Yeah, books are a hard one for me, obviously. I have like more where this came from. I have like 4 other big spots where I keep books. I really like books. To me, books are tools. So I
Mhm.
reference books a lot. But I do get rid of a fair amount of books because some of them I'm just like, I either need to like really look at the index and see, am I actually going to read this book? Do I think this book is going to be useful to me now or in the near future? If not, then it can go. Because they're pretty easy to come by.
Mhm.
But that's probably it. As far as like stuff I intentionally really give a lot of thought. Like, do I really want to get rid of this? Pretty much everything else, I'm like, whatever, I'll just get it again.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be so like, oh, I'm so blasé about it. I'm not, but like, but everything else, I'm a little more willing to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Um, and then things to add, I think as far as how I've approached this, if I can get something, I was actually just thinking about this last night, actually, because when my kids were born, I took these little photo boxes, those like cardboard photo boxes you can get at Hobby Lobby or Michael's or whatever. Um, they're, I don't know, 10 inches long, like 4 inches high or something. I started that. And so like their baby cap, their little umbilical cord, like all the things that came with them when they were new babies go in there, like congratulations cards and stuff like that, and their baptismal candle, that all goes in this box. Well, um, I start stuffing other things in there too, like little tiny toys that they might carry around when they're little toddlers and stuff. And some of them are overflowing. So I was thinking last night I need to get new storage containers. So I think a suitably fitted storage container for whatever you decide to keep, you can add that because it can add beauty to the stuff you decide to keep, but it's also, I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater and be like, don't organize your junk, get rid of it. I think there's a time and a place for good organizational tools, such as totes, bags, or shelving, or whatever. So that's kind of where I lean, where if you can get something like that, that's going to help your stuff look nice and it's going to be displayed or stored in a way that's acceptable to you, then I think that would be an appropriate thing to add.
Yeah, agreed. I was gonna say something about like organizational tools,
Mhm.
and I'm right there with you. Like, don't keep your junk, toss it. Don't organize it, just get rid of it. But then there are some things that like, okay, well, I have to keep this around, and it would be really nice if it were in an eyesore. So on top of our refrigerator, we had a basket, just this one basket that honestly was just like another junk drawer.
Yeah.
And then there was this like pile of stuff growing next to it. So we have this like weird basket that collects dust and then a pile of stuff growing next to it. And there were so many times where I would just like grab a stool and I'm like handling the top of the fridge. And I thought, this is so dumb. So I got 2 small lidded baskets that I could keep up there, and that's like necessary stuff, extra paper towel rolls, some tools, the candles. and stuff that we need to have around, but I would rather not be just hideous to look at. And I looked around for a good deal, you know, because I'm like trying to do that thrifty, frugal virtue stuff, you know. But yeah, so that I would say that in terms of material, other things that it would be a good idea to add to your life, sleep in order to make it.
Oh, you want to go there?
Oh shoot. Bonus. You
Yeah.
guys have no idea that this episode is going to be 3 hours long. um
I
so
didn't think about that.
and then another thing, and
Now we're talking.
this has occurred to me earlier today, is I've started, well, I drink this kind of water every now and then, but I want to do it more regularly. I found a recipe online for what's called like magic water, and it's juice from 2 lemons, ginger, cucumber sliced up, and then a sprig of mint. Is that what it's called? A sprig? Sprig of mint?
Yeah,
Sure. I'll call it a sprig.
sure.
And so you put all of those in a pitcher and you pour water over it, let it sit overnight, and then you drink from this water starting the next day. And citrus is super good for your liver. Cucumber is more hydrating than water itself. Ginger, I think, helps with inflammation, blah, 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 all these health benefits, right? But it also helps me drink water more. It does not taste amazing. It's not wretched, but I really enjoy drinking it because I'm like, good. This is participating in a good decision. I need more water anyway. And then I know I'm also adding these other benefits to it, or receiving these other benefits to it. So yeah, organizational tools, sleep, magic water, man.
When you said sleep, my brain immediately went companionship. That's why I was like, oh, you want to go there? Oh, okay. I'm with you, because I have had this experience recently where when I'm with people, like even if it's after church, or like my kids are in a play right now, and sometimes the parents will come early to pick up their kids and like hang out a bit. And after I've been with people, I have literally had the thought on my way home, now would be an excellent time to purge, because I feel so filled up and so connected with people that I don't feel like I need any physical object. Like
Yeah.
you could get rid of my craft things. I don't care. Get rid of all my books. Don't care. So, but it never, I can never like go straight from being with people to purging. Like on Sundays, that's not, to me, I try to take the day of rest seriously. And then when I pick my kids up from the play, it's like 10 o'clock at night when I get home and get everybody in bed. And so that's not an ideal time for me because it interrupts my sleep and I get emotional and tired and all of that. But yeah, sleep and companionship, when you're rested and you feel relationally like part of the community or part of the world and humanity, and you've had a good conversation with somebody, perfect. Like to me, that is sublime, like living.
I have totally had that experience where I'm like, I have this phenomenal, beautiful connection with a person or a group of people, and I come away feeling like nothing else matters.
Yes.
Nothing else matters. And so recently, a priest asked me, how do I get rid of everything in my life except for prayer and the work that I have to do? How do I do that? And I was like, ooh. And my initial thought was like, well, cut out absolutely everything except for prayer and the work you have to do. But of course, that's not sustainable and it's not human either. So when I was answering him, I said, like, okay, make sure that you have people in your life who support what it is God is calling you to do. Not only in the grand scheme, but day to day.
Yeah.
And not only do they support that, but they like bring you joy, like people who are going to sharpen you and help make you happy and all of that. So you need like good, solid friendships, relationships, right? And then solid boundaries around how you're spending your time. So
Right.
if you, or if a religious or someone in the laity wants to have a certain prayer time, then that's an appointment that you make with yourself that's unbreakable. So if somebody says, hey, you want to go grab coffee or you want to go meet up at that time, well, then your answer is no, you're booked.
Right.
And not only are you booked yourself, but you've made an appointment with God. Like, I'm going to be spending time in prayer then. And you don't necessarily have to disclose that. I can't then because I have something else happen. What about later?
Yeah.
And just regarding your obligations as these unbreakable appointments and making sure that that's where you're filling your cup first. There's this awesome analogy about rocks, pebbles, and sand. Are you familiar with this one?
Yes. Yes, the jar. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm rusty on this one, so you'll have to correct me if I veer off.
Okay.
But if you have a jar and you have to fill it with rocks, pebbles, and sand, and you have the same amount. If you pour sand in and then pebbles, and then you put the rocks in, and that's like, maybe it won't all fit, it's coming out of the jar. The rocks are the things that you must do. These are your obligations, like taking care of yourself, your family, making sure that your duties are fulfilled. If you put the rocks in the jar first, the big ones, and then the other little things in your life that you want to take care of, the pebbles, and they'll fit in the crevices. And then if you have extra stuff, whatever it is that you want to fill your time with, if you pour that sand in the jar, then that will fit in this same container that was previously overflowing because you weren't prioritizing well.
So all it comes down to like deciding what is truly important in the first concentric circle, second concentric circle, your pebbles, what is next important? And then the sand, like how much sand is there? There's an infinite amount of sand. And so, but it's all in this boundary of your jar. Not to dismantle the analogy, but yes, it works because you're making decisions about what is primary in my life. So you can quote unquote have it all and quote unquote do it all, but there's a very specific order and very specifically chosen things that belong in that circle, and in that circle, and they go in that order always. And then you will have an ordered life. Yeah, I think we were talking about this earlier about just having what is order. It's not like I think our podcast, and this might be a good like segue into our title. It's not so much about the quantity of belongings that you have, but it's about order and peace in your home. So you can have quite a lot of things, and I know a lot of people that have a lot of things, but they're very ordered with their life. And so if you can maintain that order and teach, if you have children, teach children, you have order, or your roommates or whoever it is that you live with or amongst, if there's order, then you could sustain quite a quantity of things. But if there's no order and there's no systems, then yeah, you're going to have chaos is going to reign in your home. So that's kind of what I figured. I kind of have a both and problem. We have a systems issue and a stuff issue. So trying to tackle both of those, but.
And I think in terms of, my good friend, the priest who posed this question, you really have to, and this for anyone, you kind of got to do a time audit. How are you spending your time?
Yep.
And all the little extra things, like I know for me, I will grab my phone to check something real fast. And then I have another friend who's a priest who's like, I turn on my phone and it's like the looking glass. Like I am just
it's a whole different world. Yeah.
It's a totally different world. Like you tune out what's peripherally around you and you're just in this screen, you're in it. So how often do you do that real fast? What are you doing to soothe yourself, entertain yourself, cope with the challenges of the life that you have, oftentimes the challenges that you elected to have, right? And so doing a solid, honest time audit, not for the sake of berating yourself, but just for the sake of evaluating. All right, so what am I doing? What needs to shift, change, go? What gets to stay?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we all get the same 24 hours in a day.
Right.
How will you be a good steward of those hours?
My husband and I, just the other night, we were talking about this because we had sickness kind of run through our home recently, and he was not as down and out as the rest of us were at certain times. But my husband is very funny. At least I think he's funny. And he wasn't feeling well the other day, and he was like, I don't know what it is about sickness, but I always like think, man, I feel so good most of the time. What do I do with my time when I feel so good? And so he goes, so I'm just thanking God that I'm feeling better today. So I got another 3 hours to scroll on my phone. Like, thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord, for giving me more time to spend on my phone. And we were just both laughing because that's humanity right now, where we're like, the Lord has given me another day. I'm going to Facebook about that. Like the Lord, and stay on Facebook for 5 hours, Facebooking about how the Lord loves me and gave me more time. Like, what are we doing?
Why are you
Why are you like, what are we doing? How am I serving? And that's what I have found recently is just how exuberant and alive I feel when I am actually serving other people. My kids, my husband, when I fully on tilt lean into that space, I feel, and it's not just about feelings, but they can be an indicator where I'm just like, this is what life is. This is what I dreamt about when I was a little girl, thinking about getting married and having kids and being a part of a community. This is it. And so then and I've had these experiences kind of boom, 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 boom lately. And so last night I was like, I need 5 hours to just go through my paper clutter. Like, I really feel like I can just accomplish this. And I did. I knocked it out because I felt so fulfilled and so like I know people and I'm a part of people and I have community and I don't need to be afraid of getting rid of this because I actually have been spending time with my kids instead of this false thing that shows me that I was a good mom. I actually was a good mom because I actually spent time with my kids. So I don't need the relic of a picture that they drew for me to show that I'm a good mom because I kept all your stuff. No, it's like, no, they will remember that I sat down and played a game with them or whatever. I've kind of been just having these like, my point of reference has shifted, where it was good and it was always worthy, but I was off a little bit. I think if you can have those things, that it really revolutionizes the way you go about this whole thing. And I think that's first before you even try to do the smallest little drawer in your home.
Oh, amen. Girl, preach. Love that. All right, girl. Let's take us to our title, because Two Coins Culture is an awesome podcast title, if I do say so myself. And I'm allowed to talk up the title of our podcast because dang, you thought of it. So, and as soon as you sent it to me, I was like, I'm in love. That's it. That's it. That's it. And Erin and I had this ridiculously long list, such a long list of possible podcast titles. And then when she sent this one, I was like, boom. It's like all the others disappeared for me. So
well, I think we had a lot of conversation because we really wanted this to not be about stuff necessarily. And so many podcasts, and I'm not saying anything bad about them, but it's so obviously about stuff. And they all have their spiritual components, like they do, but just title alone, if you are not on the minimalist train, you might avoid that. And that's not really where I thought either of our hearts were. It wasn't just about paring down stuff. It wasn't just about, items of things. it's about the spirit of the home and family and community and being with one another, and who is God asking us to be and what is he asking us to do in this world. And I really wanted something to, I think, well, we both did. We wanted something to encapsulate that, but we didn't want like a long title that nobody could remember. And so the night this happened, I mean, you and I were shooting back names for weeks. I mean, it was like, what are we going to call ourselves? Does it really matter? Like, so we did do some podcasts without a name. I think the first 3, maybe even. And yeah, one night I was waiting. I was in the car at my son's work, and I was waiting for him to get off work. And I was like, I look out the window and it's this beautiful starry night. And I'm like, Lord, what is the name of this podcast? And in my mind pops the widow with her 2 coins. And I'm like, I don't really know that story all that well. So I looked it up because I got this cool computer in my pocket. So I look up the widow's mite, and I tried to actually find the reading again, and I wish I could find it, but I stumbled upon this like Christian pastor, I think it was, and he wrote all about it, and I was like, that's it. That's it. And then that article like led to this different article about culture and what culture is, and the Latin for culture is cultere, I think is how you probably say it. But means to like till and dig up and to grow, you know, like in the garden. And so between the widow who, should I recount the story real quick? Just real quick.
Yeah, by all means, please, please.
Yeah. So the scribes were, there's this part of the temple where women were allowed in. And so everybody was supposed to go and pay their taxes and give what they could, right? Or well, give what they were obligated to give. So the scribes are all in there. And I just learned today that the container where people would drop their money was trumpet shaped. So when people dropped their money in, those in the temple and maybe even outside could hear like the sizable donation because it reverberated. So if there was like, coins going in, so people kind of knew. And this is why Jesus why he admonished the scribes and the Pharisees, because they were all about using people for their money and like, how much are you giving and what can you give and give more. And then there was this widow who in that time, you know, women did not have jobs. They did not work. They relied financially solely on their husbands and the men that they were related to. And so if they didn't have any men they were related to and their husband died, they were, you know, that was deadly to them. So she had these 2 coins, which the amount of money would be like less than a penny, like the 2 coins together. It's like one, what did I read? It was like 1/64th of a usual salary or a usual income for families of that time. But it was all she had. And so she, in her trusting, you know, abandonment to our Lord, who she knew would take care of their God, you know, she put in all that she had. And so I mean, that just really struck me because so much of what I struggle with in getting rid of things or why I keep or whatever is this fear that like it's a lack of trust, like that my community isn't going to take care of me or that God's not going to see fit to give me what I need. And so that story, when I read about it, I was like, I want to be like her, where she is just like, here's all that I have. And when I put it in that trumpet shaped container, it's gone. And I am looking to you, Lord. And then the culture, like we want to cultivate that kind of attitude towards God because he is so good and he will maybe never ever like how we dream it, but he will provide for us if we can just allow ourselves the attitude and the full heart. Here it is. Here's everything I have, and I'm going to trust you to give it back to me in full bloom and bigger than I could ever imagine. Like, give it back to me. I'm going to just prune it down. And that really struck me. And so then I texted you and I was like, 2 coins culture. And I remember when you texted back and you wrote, yeah, or something all in caps. And I was like, yes, yes,
Yeah.
this is what this is about. It's not about, it's about attitude and trust in God.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, what is it that God is asking of your unique life? Because at the very beginning of this, we talked about how living simply really is going to look so different for every single person. There is not a one size fits all. There is, however, what God is asking of your particular life, your unrepeatable life.
Yes.
And so saying yes to God, and we recognize that this life, all of our time, our material possessions, our relationships, all of that is from him, and we are going to be stewards of those gifts.
Yeah.
So I want to give, I want to have a willing spirit to give everything that God has given me back to him. I want to be able to entrust that to him. And that's hard. It's challenging. It's challenging. So it was just so easy for me to fall in love with that title. And then we were kind of joking about how, like, well, yeah, so here's the widow giving her 2 coins. And that's a beautiful concept. Also, there are 2 of us.
Yes.
And and here are our like 2 cents on living
Oh,
simply.
that's right. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that. Yeah, that's right.
Here's
Yeah.
our thoughts,
There's
take it,
two
take what you like
coins.
and leave the rest.
Yeah, it
So
kind of worked in a lot of
yeah.
different ways. Yeah, well, it's taken on a lot of different meaning lately just because of the experiences I've had. And I've had a couple people that I know that are mothers that are really ill. And I've been looking around my home and I'm like, gosh, if I needed to have their kids over, could I do that? And I've spoken about this before. I mean, my parents are far from their deathbeds, I hope, but they are aging. And I'm like, and I've just seen stories lately where people's lives go sideways overnight. And
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, is my life set up in a way where I could, um, barring the natural reaction to a devastating circumstance, is my life set up in a way practically where I
Mhm.
could function in my own home without anything being a burden? And that's the point that I'm after. That's my mission, is where my home is a place of service to me in the event that things go sideways, but also so it can be a haven for my family and other families if their lives go sideways.
Yes.
So it just, I mean, that really lights the fire in me when I really sit down and think about that, which is hard to do when I'm up at night and, scrolling and Facebook Marketplace. But if I can keep that in the forefront of my mind, like my life is to be of service to other people and my space that God has so generously given me, um, then what am I doing with my space? What am I doing with my
Right.
life? And how is
Right.
this serving other people? Um, so it's good to revisit the why of like our title, I think, for me quite a
Yeah.
bit,
For
but also
me
just the
too.
Christian life, like that whole thing, my life is not my own. I mean, Christ gave up his whole life for us. So I, you know, I might be able to let go of a few books or piece of furniture to be his hands and feet to other people, or his space, his haven for the sorrowful heart or the difficulties people have. So that's what
Mm.
I'm about right now, is trying to make
I,
that reality.
I love that. And we even talked about this last episode, just the concept of hospitality,
Mhm.
and being able to like making sure that we're able to receive our own families in our homes. And I love that idea of, if life goes south for somebody around me, a friend, someone in the community, would I be able to help, practically speaking? Or if our lives were turned upside down, would our house truly be a haven? And on the other side of that coin, you have, all right, well, when life is just rolling merrily along and things are good, is my space a place where people could come, be at peace, delight in it, and feel, just at ease and happy in life?
Yeah.
So I think it's pointing to both sides. I think that's so important to recognize them as I don't know, a point of discernment, you
Yes.
know?
Yes. Well, yeah, because you
I-
would want it to be both. Isn't
Yeah,
that what haven is? It's like a place where you can be all the things. You can
all the things.
all the
Yeah.
things. You can be happy and you can be mournful, and it's the same space because often they do exist in the same space. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay, so that is a wrap on episode 5 of Two Coins Culture. We answered, honestly, we have more questions that were submitted to us. We have more questions to answer. Some of them are quite a bit heavier than the ones that we addressed tonight. So those are most certainly worthy of an additional episode. If you are enjoying us, please give us a shout out, subscribe, leave us a good review, all the things that podcasters ask you to do. Just do those for us too. That'd be great.
Well, yeah, and like the more that we get subscribers, the maybe the bigger this could get and the more people could hear this message, and we could actually do what we want to do, which is share this with our culture and revitalize the culture to have this as their mentality so we can all be better stewards of our things and our lives and our relationships. So, and Katie, where can people find you if they want to work with you? Because let's not forget that you.
Yeah, I'm a minimalist consultant and I can work remotely. I mean, it's limited, right? I do serve locally in Omaha, Nebraska and the surrounding area, as well as Lincoln. And that's super great. So I'm delighted to come locally. But if you'd like to work with me online, you can go to katiesciba.com and then contact me through my website. So I'm a speaker, professional speaker, as well as a minimalist consultant. And those are the things that are absolutely so delightful to me. They're very fulfilling. It's a joy to do it. So.
Yeah, I don't minimalist consult, but I can give you my 2 cents. So you can find me on Facebook, and I have an email that you can contact me. It's just Erin, ERIN, at erinAhammond.com. So either one of us, but yeah, Katie's your expert when it comes to this, but certainly willing to help and answer questions or connect you with Katie if you need me to. But
We should probably get like a joint
we should.
podcast
Yeah.
account. Now that I'm thinking about it, that's something that we could add to make our lives simpler. It's great.
Totally. Yes,
All right.
absolutely. Yeah, this has been enjoyable. I think this was one of our most fun, I think. This was really great for me. So, all right,
All
Katie,
right.
have a splendid evening.
You too.